Hi guys, it's Mandy from Mandyleeplays, and in this video, I'm going to share with you 7 RPGs or JRPGs that have a unique gameplay experience from the rest. We all know JRPGs have battle mechanics that influence how you play the game. It is nice to see what developers implement to make their games different from the rest. And let's be honest, there's a lot of different JRPGs out in the market. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Now on to our first pick, Valkyria Chronicles. Now, Valkyria Chronicles is available on almost all the gaming platforms, and I gotta give credit where credit is due. Sega does a good job in making their games more accessible to people on other platforms. Anyways, what makes Valkyria Chronicles special? It basically combines strategy RPG mechanics with third-person shooter mechanics. Now, Sega has dubbed this the Blitz system, which stands for Battle of Live Tactical Zone. The gist of the system is that you take turns moving your soldiers around the battlefield, but here's the twist. You instead control the characters directly. For example, in Fire Emblem, you can see all your units on this grid, but in Valkyria Chronicles, you have to move each character individually, which makes the game more interesting, and it impacts you more when a character dies or is very injured. And each of your characters or units usually fall under a different class. The classes are Shock Troopers, Soldiers, Snipers, which is honestly my favorite class. Sniper classes always come with really interesting characters, and it's really satisfying to pick out enemies from a long distance. There's also controllable tanks, which for most part the protagonist usually is in the tank and you could do really big damage with a tank. Now, controlling the vehicles is a hit and miss. I felt like I didn't really control it well, so I didn't really enjoy vehicles or tanks. But it is different from what we see in other strategy RPGs, not only because it's more modern with modern day war like tanks and stuff, but adding in the third person's perspective really enhances the gameplay for me, and it's something really unique. Now, it does still have a lot of aspects we see in traditional strategy RPGs, and you gotta make sure your units are not out in the open because they could become bullet sponges. And in most Valkyria Chronicles games, when a unit is down, you have a certain amount of time to get a medic to that person, but if you don't get there in time, they die. So from all this, you could tell that the game emphasizes positioning, line of sight, and also terrain. And all of this is in real time. You're controlling it from a third person's perspective, and that's what makes it unique in my book. And plus, it's actually a really good game, and I highly recommend. I really need to find the time to do a second playthrough. Now, the next one is Megaman Battle Network. Now, I don't really have a huge history when it comes to Mega Man. I only have the Mega Man Battle Collection, which spans 10 different games in the series, which is pretty wild, and they're actually pretty fun. Now, Mega Man Battle Network is like the JRPG version of Mega Man. Now, the battles take place in a 3x6 grid where you can move Mega Man freely within their half of the grid while attacking enemies on the other side. You could actively dodge enemy attacks just by moving Mega Man around. And funny thing, the grid actually looks like a dance floor. I mean, just add the right music and boom, you're in the zone. Now, you could attack enemies using Mega Man's Buster Cannon, which is the most ideal way to deal with enemies. But as you progress, you do want to get stronger stuff, and that is where the battle chips come in. Now, the battle chips are kind of confusing, not gonna lie. When I first played it, I was just like, what the heck is going on? But once you get used to it, it is pretty fun. These battle chips represent various weapons and support items that Mega Man can use throughout the battle. Once a chip is selected, Mega Man can use them during the battle. Now, there's like 6 games in the collection, and they each vary differently because of the years that they came out. So the first Mega Man Battle Network is a little bit clunky versus the more recent ones. Now, what makes this game unique from the others? Well, basically the fact that you have to move Mega Man in a grid, and the whole chip mechanic is really different, and it's something I really haven't seen in other JRPGs. Personally speaking, the game itself is really fun, though I'm not the best at it, and honestly, it might be the most unique one in this list. honest, just because of the chip management system and how weird it could get. So if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend you check out Megaman Battle Network. Now we have another strategy RPG. Wow. Unicorn Overlord. Now Unicorn Overlord was made by Vanillaware and published by Atlas. This one is a really cool pick because they did a really great job on innovating the strategy RPG genre a little bit more. This game is a blend of strategy RPG along with real-time strategy like in Age of Empires or Civilization. Now, instead of controlling different units on a grid, this one opts to control a group of units. Now the game starts you off with 3 slots, but you could maximize it to 5, which adds a lot of complexities to the battle because of course there is weapon advantages, so you don't want to have all these people using the same weapon, and there's also where you place them in the squad, and within each unit squad there is a leader. Now depending on who you choose as the leader, so let's say your leader is a rider, they could go really far and really fast, and the commander you choose can give the whole squad buffs and skills. And there's a ton of gameplay mechanics and different strategies in this game, so if you're a person who loves all that micromanaging, Unicorn Overload is probably a good game for you. Now combat is split between the movements of troops all over the battlefield and combat. In the movement phase, instead of adhering to the turn-based system like Valkyria Chronicles or Fire Emblem, the game allows you to control multiple units in a real-time environment. So enemies will be moving throughout the battlefield as your units move. You could pause between the real-time movement, so you do have time to think and place your units where they need to be. Battles play out based on characters' attributes and assigned behaviors. These battles can last until either one of the side is defeated or if both sides run out of points. Now, I wish I could go further into detail about the game mechanics, but there is a lot of game mechanics. Now, a lot of people might find this a little bit overwhelming, and I did at first, but once you learn what works and what doesn't, and a lot of trial and error, the game is absolutely fun and addicting. And while in my opinion the story wasn't the best, it was very traditional, the gameplay does really make up for it. So the next game on my list is pretty weird, but I'm gonna explain why, and that is for Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. Now personally speaking, I really don't like Chain of Memories, but with saying that, the battle mechanics are pretty unique. It's kind of like two things can be true at the same time. Now I usually don't recommend games I really don't like, but with Chain of Memories, a lot of people like it and its gameplay. So maybe I'm just weird, but I still recommend it if you want a unique take on Kingdom Hearts. Instead of the usual press X and swing your keyblade, they added this card mechanic. Now there is an in-story reason why Sora uses cards, but I'm not going to explain it here because I will need a whole nother video for Kingdom Hearts lore. But anyways, gameplay wise, each card has a value ranging from 0 to 9, which determines its strength in combat. The value is crucial because it dedicates whether a card can be successful or broken by the enemy. You can also combine up to 3 cards at once to perform a powerful combo, or a special move called slights. Slights are a more advanced technique that combines specific cards to unleash powerful, unique attacks, such as Ars Arkham or Sonic Blade. Now the trade-off for using these combos in a slight is that the first card in your combo is removed from your deck for the remainder of the battle. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and this is happening in real time, so you gotta work fast. And you also gotta keep in mind the deck that you have. Pro tip, if you're really hesitant on the card mechanic and you just want to try Chain of Memories, I do recommend playing it on easy. Now you can't really change the difficulty once the game starts, so keep that in mind, but I do recommend this game if you want a unique experience. The next game is actually a game that I don't really talk about in my channel, mostly because I didn't really find the need to put it anywhere, but I found a need to put it in this video. But before that, please like if you're liking the video and subscribe if you haven't and you're loving the channel so far. But let's get to the next pick, and that is for Final Fantasy 13. A really polarizing entry into the series. It is very awkward when it came to its battle mechanics. It's either you love it or you hate it. Honestly, I actually really liked it. Now I do have a soft spot when it comes to the 13 trilogy. It's not my favorite, but I don't hate it. Final Fantasy 13 has a very linear gameplay with a questionable story, but it does have a unique battle mechanic called the Paradigm Shift, which allows party members to switch between different roles mid-battle. Each paradigm represents a different combination of roles, whether it's magic, buffs or debuffs, and healing. appealing, and the paradigm shift makes it easy to experiment with the different roles. The gameplay encourages flexibility and strategic thinking, as the battle conditions tend to frequently change. Now, I'm kind of paraphrasing because there's a lot of in-game mechanics, but I don't really want to get into that here. Now, why I say it's unique is because it's honestly something I haven't seen in any other Final Fantasy game. And if you think about it, the last mainline Final Fantasy game was Final Fantasy XII, and that one was kind of polarizing as well. So they really wanted to go for this different gameplay to hopefully capture newer people into the series. Now, did they succeed in it? Depends on who you ask. So while I do recognize that Final Fantasy XIII is not everybody's cup of tea, I still want to recognize the fact that it has a very unique gameplay mechanic that really stands on its own. And even with all its faults, I do still recommend you give Final Fantasy XIII a try. It is honestly really good. Speaking of 13, next on this list is 13 Sentinels. Now this game is another Vanillaware game, which you really gotta give them credit. Vanillaware likes to experiment a lot when it comes to their gameplay, and it truly shows. But what makes this game unique? Well, I'm gonna tell you. So this game is like a visual novel combined with strategy RPG mechanics. Now, how the heck does this all work? Well, basically, they split the game into two. So you have the story portion, which you play like a visual novel, and then once you get to a certain point, you're gonna have to go to the gameplay version and then do the strategy RPG-ness. As the name implies, there are 13 Sentinels, and Sentinels are basically these big mecha robots. These mecha robots are a little bit unique. For example, some focus on close range attacks, others are more long range. There's actually airborne Sentinels, so there's different classes, and each Sentinel is piloted by a high school student, because of course you'll figure that out through the story portion. But yeah, the whole gameplay mechanic is actually very easy and simple. There's just a lot of enemies, which honestly it was somewhat satisfying to see all the damage you could do. Now this game works a little bit like Unicorn Overlord, where it does take place in real time and you have to command each Sentinel, and you could upgrade these mecha robots in a lot of different ways, but your Sentinel can overheat. So if you put it out in every battle, then it's gonna overheat and the person can't really do anything. Instead, you gotta plan your party beforehand, equip the people who have been sitting in the sidelines so you could counter this whole overheating scenario. And plus, there's actually upgrades that help you with the overheating. And the gameplay is just truly fun, especially when you do a lot of damage to a lot of the enemies and you just see them dropping like flies. Satisfying. The next game on the list is Xenoblade Chronicles. Xenoblade Chronicles is a unique blend of real-time strategy with action RPG elements. If I were to compare it to something, I think it will closely be like an MMORPG, but with traditional JRPG mechanics. So basically your characters are always on auto attack and you have to do the special attacks and move people around. Now arts is basically a special attack from each character that does more damage than the regular damage. And also the characters have to be in a certain place to do critical damage. For example, backslash, your character has to be in the back of the enemy to get the most of that attack. Additionally, there is this thing called Argo. If someone is built to be a tank, they must divert the attention of the enemy with their Argo. And that leads me to one of my favorite mechanics, and that is the chain attacks. Chain attacks are super fun, and in every game you could chain up combos to an absurd degree where it's just so satisfying. If you do it right, it causes a cartoonishly high amount of damage, and plus it is very useful against harder enemies and bosses. Anyways, so that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed and got some good game recommendations. If you have any games that are a little bit unique, please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to read them. If you liked the video, then please hit that like button. I would appreciate it. And if you like my content and would love to see more, then consider subscribing. I would appreciate that as well. You can follow me on my socials in the description down below. I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of the day, and as always, play a good game. Peace.